Hey everyone, ready for a deep dive into some seriously out there ideas about living longer?
I'm ready. This is going to be fun.
So today we're tackling longevity. And I'm not talking about just eating your veggies and hitting the gym. We're going deep into the science, the stuff that might just rewrite the rules of aging.
Ooh, I like where this is going.
You know, you sent me some fascinating articles about some pretty unconventional paths to a longer life: fasting, fecal transplants, and get this, even vampire blood transfusions.
Vampire blood transfusions. Wow, sounds like something straight out of a movie.
Right. I know, it sounds crazy, but there's actually some pretty intriguing research behind these ideas.
Yeah.
So let's kick things off with fasting. I've heard a lot about the potential health benefits, but honestly, I'm still a bit fuzzy on the science.
Sure. Well, one of the studies you sent over, the one from MIT, looked at the impact of fasting on mice. And let me tell you, the results were pretty mind-blowing.
Really? What did they find?
So they found that a simple 24-hour fast, like just one day of not eating dramatically, boosted the regenerative capacity of intestinal stem cells in the mice.
Okay, back up a sec. Intestinal stem cells.
Yeah, so these stem cells are basically the workhorses of your gut. They're responsible for maintaining that lining, which is super important for overall health and immunity. And well, as we age, those stem cells don't work quite as well as they used to.
Got it.
Yeah.
So fasting somehow supercharges those stem cells.
You got it. Fasting seems to trigger this metabolic switch in the cells. They shift from using glucose, sugar as their primary energy source, to breaking down fatty acids.
Interesting. So it's like flipping a switch in how the cells fuel themselves.
Exactly. And that flip triggers this cascade of molecular events that actually enhance the cell's ability to regenerate.
Okay, that's pretty amazing for mice guts. But what does that mean for us humans?
Well, there's growing evidence that fasting could have similar effects on other types of cells in the body, too.
Really? So it's not just about gut health then. It's about, maybe slowing down aging throughout the whole body.
That's the idea. And get this, in the MIT study, they were even able to replicate the effects of fasting by giving the mice a drug that activated a specific molecular pathway.
Wait, so you're telling me there could be a fasting pill someday? That's wild.
It's still early days, but the possibility is there.
That would definitely make things easier. But okay, let's talk about actual humans for a minute. What about that study from Kyoto and Okinawa, the one with the volunteers who fasted?
Ah, yes. That one's fascinating, too. It shows that fasting can cause some serious changes in our metabolism, how our bodies process energy.
What kind of changes?
Well, they found that during prolonged fasting, there was this big jump in something called ophthalmic acid.
Ophthalmic acid. That sounds familiar. Is that something to do with your eyes?
It's actually found throughout the body. And it turns out ophthalmic acid is super important for protecting cells from damage.
Oh, interesting. So the more ophthalmic acid you have, the better your cells are protected.
That's the gist of it. And here's the kicker. Levels of ophthalmic acid naturally go down as we age, but guess what?
Fasting brings them back up.
Bingo.
So it's like a natural anti-aging molecule that our bodies already make, and fasting just gives it a boost.
Precisely.
Wow, okay. I'm starting to see why people are so into fasting. But before I sign up for a week-long juice cleanse, what about that study with the tiny worms, the C. elegans? The one where they messed with their diet?
Yes, the nematodes. So those little guys might seem kind of gross, but they're actually incredibly useful for studying aging.
Why is that?
Well, their lifespan is only a couple of weeks, which means researchers can observe their entire aging process in a really short amount of time.
Oh, I get it. It's like fast-forwarding through aging.
Exactly. So in the study from Harvard, they restricted the worms' diet. Basically, they put them on a calorie-restricted diet. And you know what? It had this huge impact on their mitochondria.
Mitochondria. Those are the powerhouses of the cell.
You got it. They're like the tiny energy factories inside every cell.
Right, right. I vaguely remember that from high school biology.
Huh?
So what happened to the worms' mitochondria when they went on a diet?
Well, as we age, our mitochondria tend to fragment and break down. They get less efficient, like a machine that's wearing out. But the researchers found that the worms on the calorie-restricted diet kept their mitochondria in this more youthful, interconnected state.
So it's like keeping those little cellular power plants humming along smoothly for longer.
Yep. And guess what? This mitochondrial preservation was directly linked to the worms living longer.
Interesting. So even those tiny worms, just cutting back on what they ate, made a difference in how long they lived.
It's pretty remarkable, right?
Okay, so we've got mice, humans, and even tiny worms all showing that fasting, or even just mimicking its effects, can have some pretty powerful anti-aging effects. That's a lot to digest, literally.
It's a recurring theme in longevity research. Fasting seems to trigger some ancient survival mechanisms that we've kind of forgotten about in our modern world of abundance.
It makes you think twice about that late night snack, doesn't it?
It really does. But speaking of things that might make you rethink your snack choices, are you ready to dive into the world of fecal transplant?
Oh boy, here we go. I gotta admit, this one's a little hard to stomach, literally.
Yeah.
But hey, for science, right?
Weird science.
So tell me about this Max Planck Institute study. They gave gut microbes from young killifish to middle-aged ones. Did anything actually happen?
Well, get this. The middle-aged fish who got those youthful gut microbes actually lived 37% longer. That's like adding decades to a human life.
Whoa, that's a huge jump. So are you telling me that the secret to a longer life is hiding in someone else's gut?
It's not quite that simple.
Okay.
But the research suggests that the gut microbiome plays a much bigger role in aging than we ever realized. And what's really interesting is that they also tried the reverse, giving older fish microbes to the younger fish, and it had no effect at all.
Huh. So it seems like it's not just about having any old bacteria in your gut, it's about having that youthful balance. But okay, we're not fish, so how does this actually translate to humans?
Right. Well, there's growing evidence that the gut microbiome plays a similarly important role in human aging. There was this study from Canada. They did fecal transplants on mice, focusing on these structures in the small intestine called Peyer's patches.
Peyer's patches. I want to be honest, that doesn't ring a bell. What are those?
Think of them like a little immune system outposts in your gut. They're clusters of immune cells that help protect you from all the bad stuff that tries to get in.
So they're kind of like security guards for your gut.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. But here's the thing. As we age, these Peyer's patches start to decline. They get weaker, making us more vulnerable to infections and other age-related health problems.
So it's like our immune system gets weaker in our gut as we get older.
Exactly. But what they found in this study is that fecal transplants from younger mice could actually rejuvenate those Peyer's patches in the older mice.
Wow, so it's like giving them a dose of youthful immunity.
Pretty much.
Okay, that's kind of blowing my mind. So we've got fish and mice showing that gut bacteria can influence lifespan. But hold on, are people actually doing fecal transplants right now?
They are. Fecal transplants have already been used very successfully to treat some serious infections. And get this, the cure rates are crazy high, over 90% in some cases.
Wow, I had no idea. But okay, I gotta admit, the thought of it is still kind of, well, you know.
Yeah, I get it. It's not exactly the most appealing procedure, but hey, if it works, it works. And who knows, maybe someday we'll have some more refined methods of delivering those beneficial gut microbes.
Fingers crossed. Okay, before we move on, there's one more longevity path we need to explore, and this one, well, it sounds straight out of a horror movie. Young blood transfusions. Are we really talking about vampire science here?
It might sound like science fiction, but the research in this area is pretty wild. We actually have multiple studies that show some pretty remarkable effects of young blood on older mice.
Really? So is there any actual evidence that young blood can make older bodies younger?
There is. One study, this was from UC and Stanford, they found that infusions of young blood improved brain function in older mice. Like their memory got better, and they even started forming new connections between nerve cells.
Wow, that's not just physical rejuvenation. It's like a brain boost, too.
Yeah. One of the researchers who worked on that study, Rudolf Tanzi, he's a big name in genetics and aging research, and he said he was completely blown away by how much younger the mice became, both physically and mentally.
Wow, blown away.
Yeah.
That's a pretty strong reaction coming from a scientist. So did the young blood do anything else besides boost brain power? What about other parts of the body?
Oh, yeah, there were other effects, too. Another study from Harvard found that young blood actually rejuvenated muscles in older mice. They got stronger and had more endurance, and they even figured out that there's this specific protein in young blood, GDF11, that seems to be responsible for a lot of this muscle regeneration.
GDF11.
Oh.
Got to remember that one. So is it like a muscle-building elixir found in young blood?
It seems that way.
And then there was that other Harvard study that showed young blood improved the sense of smell in older mice, right? And circulation too, I think.
You got it. It's amazing to think that something as basic as blood could have such a powerful impact on so many different parts of the body.
It really is. It makes you wonder, what else is hiding in that young blood?
Right. Like, what other secrets are we going to uncover?
So hold on. Are we really talking about vampire-style blood transfusions becoming a thing in the future?
Well, hold your horses. It's not that simple. The studies in mice are definitely exciting, but we've got a long way to go before we can safely try this stuff in humans.
Right. Safety first.
We need those big, rigorous clinical trials to make sure it's actually beneficial and to figure out if there are any risks.
Okay, so we're not scheduling our young blood transfusions just yet, but the potential is definitely there.
Oh, absolutely. And, it raises some pretty big ethical questions, too.
Yeah, for sure. Like, who would have access to these treatments if they do become a reality? And what would it mean for our healthcare systems?
Exactly. It's a whole new world of possibilities and challenges.
Well, we've covered a lot of ground today, from fasting to fecal transplants to young blood transfusions. What are your big takeaways from all of this? What's sticking with you?
What strikes me is that all three of these approaches, as different as they seem, they all tap into these ancient, almost primal ways that our bodies can repair and rejuvenate themselves.
It's like we're rediscovering these hidden powers that we've forgotten about.
That's it, exactly. And while the research is still in its early stages, it's clear that we're only just beginning to understand the true potential of these approaches.
This has been an amazing conversation so far. I'm already thinking about my gut health and maybe giving that 24-hour fast a try. But for now, let's take a break and we'll come back and explore some of the ethical and societal implications of extending lifespan.
Sounds good. I'm ready for round 2.
All right, so we've delved into the science behind these wild longevity ideas, fasting, fecal transplants, and young blood transfusions. But now let's shift gears a bit and talk about the bigger picture. What are the implications of all this?
Yeah, that's a really important question. It's not just about whether we can extend lifespan, but whether we should. And if we do, how do we do it responsibly?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So what worries you about all of this? What are some potential challenges or concerns we need to be thinking about?
Well, one big one is unintended consequences. We're still figuring out all the factors that play into aging, and messing with them could backfire in ways we don't expect.
Right, like it's kind of a domino effect, right?
Yeah.
You change one thing, and who knows what else might get thrown off balance.
That's it exactly. For instance, let's take fasting. It's shown some great results, but it's not for everyone. And even if you're healthy, doing it the wrong way could be risky.
Yeah, that makes sense. It's like any powerful tool, you got to know how to use it right. What about fecal transplants? Are there any risks with those?
Oh, absolutely. They've been super effective for certain infections, but messing with the gut microbiome is serious business. We don't fully know the long-term effects yet.
Right. It's not just swapping out bad bacteria for good, like changing a light bulb. It's a whole ecosystem in there.
Exactly. The gut microbiome is super complex, and it's connected to so many aspects of our health. Changing it could have all these ripple effects throughout the body.
So more research is definitely needed on that front. Okay, let's talk about young blood transfusions. That one seems the most ethically tricky, wouldn't you say?
Oh, yeah, for sure. There are so many ethical landmines with that one. A big one is the potential for exploitation. What if young blood becomes like this super valuable commodity? There's a risk that people could be exploited for their blood, especially those who are already vulnerable.
Ugh, that's a scary thought. Like, we don't want to create a world where the wealthy are literally sucking the youth out of the poor. Right?
Exactly. We got to make sure that any advances in longevity are accessible to everyone, not just a privileged few.
Okay, so access and equity are huge concerns.
Yeah.
What other ethical challenges come to mind when you think about young blood transfusions?
Well, informed consent is another biggie. People need to understand all the potential risks and benefits before they donate or receive young blood. And they need to be able to say no without feeling pressured.
Absolutely. It's their body, their choice.
Right. And then there's the psychological impact to consider. How would people handle the prospect of living much longer? Would it change our views on work, family, retirement, basically, how we live our lives?
That's a good point. It's like, are we emotionally and mentally prepared for such a big shift in lifespan? It's kind of mind-blowing to even think about.
It really is. And then you've got the societal implications. What happens to our healthcare systems, retirement plans, even just our cities and infrastructure if people are living decades longer.
Wow. Yeah, it's like a ripple effect, but on a massive scale.
Right.
Extending lifespan could change everything.
Exactly. And let's not forget the environmental impact. More people living longer means more resources consumed, more waste produced. It's a lot to consider.
It seems like we need to pump the brakes a little bit and think about all of this before we go full speed ahead with extending lifespan.
I agree. We need to be cautious, wise, and really think through the potential consequences.
Okay, so we've laid out some potential pitfalls. Now, how do we move forward responsibly? What are some concrete steps we can take to mitigate these risks and ensure that any longevity advances actually benefit humanity?
Well, first things first, we need more research. We've learned a lot, but we still have so much more to uncover about aging.
Right. It's not just about finding a magic pill. It's about understanding how all the pieces fit together.
Exactly. We need to keep investing in basic science, in finding out exactly how these interventions work and what the long-term effects are.
Okay. Research is key. What else?
We also need to have open and honest conversations about the ethical side of all this. That means scientists, ethicists, policymakers, everyone needs to be at the table.
It's like a global discussion about the future of aging, right?
Exactly. And we need to start having those conversations now before these technologies become widely available. We need some ground rules, some ethical guidelines to make sure we're using them for good.
So it's not just about the science, it's about our values as a society.
Exactly. We need to figure out what kind of future we're trying to create.
Okay, so we've talked about research and ethics, but what about the practical stuff? How do we make sure these longevity interventions are accessible and affordable for everyone, not just the wealthy?
That's a crucial point. We need to make sure our healthcare systems are ready for a potential surge in lifespan. That means more investment in geriatric care, figuring out new ways to care for an aging population.
It's not just about living longer. It's about making those extra years good years, right?
Absolutely. We need to make sure people have access to good healthcare, social support, and opportunities to stay engaged and active throughout their lives.
That makes sense. We don't want to create a world where people are living longer but miserable. Now, what about the whole inequality issue? How do we prevent these longevity interventions from becoming just another luxury for the rich?
That's a big concern. We need to explore ways to make these treatments affordable for everyone. Maybe that means government subsidies, or public-private partnerships, or even open-source research models. We need to get creative.
It sounds like we need a whole new approach to healthcare, one that prioritizes equity and access for all.
Exactly. And it's not just about money. We also need to address the underlying social and economic factors that affect health. Things like access to education, housing, and nutritious food.
So it's a much bigger conversation than just about lifespan. It's about creating a world where everyone has the chance to live a long, healthy, and fulfilling life.
That's it. It's about shifting our focus from just extending lifespan to promoting healthy aging for everyone.
It's like instead of just adding years to life, we're adding life to years.
Beautifully put. That's exactly what we should be striving for. A world where everyone can thrive throughout their lifespan.
Well, I think this conversation has really shown how complex this whole longevity thing is.
Yeah.
It's not just about the science. It's about our values, our ethics, and our vision for the future.
Couldn't agree more. It's a conversation we all need to be having.
Okay, so we've explored the potential benefits, the challenges, and the ethics of extending lifespan. And we've even envisioned a future where longevity is a gift shared by all of humanity. But before we get too serious,
Yeah, let's lighten things up a bit.
let's take a moment to appreciate the sheer wonder of it all.
Oh, absolutely. It's mind-blowing what we're learning about the human body and how we age. It's like we're on the verge of unlocking the secrets of time itself.
It really is incredible. And even with all the challenges we've talked about, there's this sense of hope and excitement that comes with these discoveries.
Definitely. Feels like we're on the cusp of something truly transformative, a new era where aging might not be seen as inevitable decline, but as a process we can understand, manage, and maybe even reverse.
It's an exciting time to be alive, that's for sure. And while we need to be cautious and responsible, I think it's okay to dream a little bit.
Oh, for sure. Let's let our imaginations run wild for a minute.
Yeah.
If we could create the ideal future for longevity, what would it look like?
All right, so we've covered fasting, fecal transplants, young blood, all these wild ideas about extending lifespan. But you mentioned there's even more cutting-edge research happening. What are scientists really excited about these days? What's next on the horizon?
Well, one area that's generating a ton of buzz, senolytics.
Senolytics, okay, that's a new one for me.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing stuff. Basically, senolytics are drugs that target these things called senescent cells. Think of them like zombie cells.
Zombie cells?
Yeah.
That sounds kind of creepy.
It is kind of creepy. So as we age, we accumulate more and more of these senescent cells. They're cells that have stopped dividing like they're supposed to, but they don't die off. They just kind of hang around, causing trouble.
So they're like the bad neighbors of the cellular world, just causing problems for everyone else.
Exactly. And they pump out all these harmful substances that create inflammation and damage the tissues around them. They contribute to all sorts of age-related problems.
Ah, I see. So senolytics, these drugs, they target and eliminate these zombie cells.
Precisely. They're like little assassins clearing out the cellular bad guys.
That's pretty wild. So what, are we going to be popping senolytic pills in the future?
Not quite yet. There are a bunch of promising senolytics in clinical trials right now, but it's a super hot area of research.
So you're saying watch this space.
Absolutely.
Okay, that's super interesting. But what about actually repairing or replacing damaged tissues and organs? Is that even possible?
That's where regenerative medicine comes in.
Regenerative medicine. Okay, I've heard of that, but I'm a little fuzzy on the details.
Basically, it's all about developing therapies that can either fix damaged tissues and organs or even grow brand new ones from scratch.
Wait, grow new organs? That sounds like something straight out of Star Trek.
It does, doesn't it? But scientists are making incredible progress in areas like stem cell therapy, gene editing, and 3D bioprinting, all of which could revolutionize regenerative medicine.
Okay, break that down for me. What are stem cells and how could they help with aging?
Stem cells are like the body's master cells. They have this unique ability to transform into any other type of cell in the body. So you could have stem cells that become heart cells, brain cells, skin cells, you name it.
So they're like blank slates that can be programmed to become whatever we need.
Exactly. And with stem cell therapy, the idea is to harness that power to repair or replace damaged tissues and organs.
Okay, that makes sense. So could stem cells potentially help repair a damaged heart, for example?
It's definitely a possibility. There are already clinical trials using stem cells to treat heart disease, and the results are looking promising.
Wow, that's amazing. What about gene editing? Where does that fit into all of this?
Gene editing is this incredible tool that lets scientists make very precise changes to DNA.
So it's like correcting typos in our genetic code.
That's a perfect analogy. And by fixing those typos, we might be able to prevent or even reverse diseases that are caused by faulty genes.
So could gene editing potentially cure inherited diseases? Or even stop them from being passed down to future generations?
Potentially, yes. And it also has huge implications for regenerative medicine. For instance, scientists are exploring ways to use gene editing to make cells better at repairing themselves.
Okay, that's mind-blowing. And what about 3D bioprinting? Is that what it sounds like? Like printing out organs?
You got it. 3D bioprinting uses these special printers to create living tissues, layer by layer.
Wow, so like we could actually print out a new kidney or a liver.
It sounds crazy, but researchers have already successfully printed out functional skin and cartilage, and they're working towards more complex organs.
It's like science fiction becoming reality right before our eyes.
It really is. We might even get to a point where organ transplants are a thing of the past.
Wow. All of this is just incredible. It feels like we're standing at the edge of a medical revolution.
I know, right? It's a truly exciting time to be working in this field. All these incredible technologies are converging: senolytics, regenerative medicine, gene editing, 3D bioprinting. The potential is just enormous.
It feels like we're on the verge of a whole new era for healthcare, an era where aging might not be something we dread, but something we can manage and maybe even reverse.
It's a pretty amazing thought, isn't it?
It really is. And it's inspiring to think about all the potential benefits. Alleviating suffering, helping people live longer, healthier lives, and unlocking human potential in ways we can't even imagine yet.
Absolutely. But even with all the excitement, it's important to remember that it's not just about adding years to life, but about adding life to years.
Well said. It's about making sure those extra years are filled with quality, purpose, and joy.
Exactly. It's about helping people thrive at every age.
This has been such a fascinating conversation. It's clear that longevity research is opening up a whole new world of possibilities, but it's also raising some really important questions about what it means to be human and what kind of future we want to create.
I couldn't agree more, and I think it's a conversation that everyone should be a part of.
Absolutely. So to all our listeners out there, thanks for joining us on this deep dive into longevity. We hope it sparked your curiosity and got you thinking about the future of aging. Keep exploring these ideas, keep asking questions, and most importantly, keep dreaming big.
That's it. The future of aging is in our hands. Let's make it a good one.
And on that note, that's a wrap for this episode of The Deep Dive. Until next time, stay curious and keep diving deep.